do also, though, and I want to make this clear, I do believe in absolute and utter self-accountability as a man. I think as a man, everything that happens to you is your fault. Me going to jail was my fault. Me being attacked online was my fault. If all these bad things that happened to me, I will take responsibility for, even if I believe they were unfair or unjust. And I think that any man who's going to sit there and say, I'm struggling, he also needs to wake up and understand that if you're going to truly struggle to not click on a website, then you're going to deserve the terrible life you're going to live. And the devil or the matrix or whatever you want to call them are going to fill your life with temptations. They're going to fill your life with easy way outs that they're going to want you to take, because the good road is usually the hardest road. And if you're going to continue to fall for them, then you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that. So it's double-edged. It's certainly difficult that pornography is everywhere and men are struggling with it. But to me, what's even more upsetting is that these men don't have enough fortitude and enough mental strength to wake up and say, I'm better than that. But this is the thing, right? So I'm about to get started, Candace.
Good, get started.
This is the thing. But this is the thing, right? So when you attack a man's mental fortitude on one issue, you attack it on all issues. This is why it's done purposefully. To resist a slave mind, you need to be able to resist in the first place. How can you resist a slave mind if you have no physicality, you have no willpower, no ability to mentally resist anything? Well, then what you're gonna end up doing, you're gonna end up eating the bugs and watching the porn and sitting in front of your computer. And that's what they want from the people. So I think that it's actually all very interconnected. People come at me with the porn problem and I get the same thing. Guys say to me all the time, hey, what are you gonna do? What should I do? I struggle with pornography. And I say, that's because you have nothing else in your life in order. If you were in good physical condition and you had the money you were supposed to have and you had the mentality you were supposed to have, you wouldn't need it. So the reason you're so addicted to porn is because everything else in your life is a failure. And yeah, it's certainly a complicated issue. It's a difficult one. And this is why they fear male agency so much, because when men truly wake up and decide to be the best versions of themselves, they're hard to control because all these control mechanisms fall by the wayside. They don't want the porn anymore. They don't want the antidepressants anymore. They don't want the garbage anymore. And now you have a whole bunch of men who actually want truth and honor and respect, and they want to live for something. And then what are they going to live for? They're going to want to be brave. They're going to want to do the right thing, regardless of how dangerous it may be for their own personal circumstance. And that sounds like a difficult population to enslave. I mean, that's what's scary. I had a company, I was fighting at the time. And on a side note, I actually want to make this clear. We talk about things people have done in the past for money. I beat people up for money. I hurt people for money. I don't often tell people this, and I think it's the first interview I've mentioned it in. There's a person who can never walk the same again because he fought me. I've had 87 professional fights and I did my best to kill people. You're gonna sit here and talk about what I did for money. I literally hurt people for money. And so I'm not a perfect person. I'm not sorry for my kickboxing career or my cage fights. I'm not sorry for any of it. I had bare knuckle fights. I'm not sorry for any of them, right? I was a person who had to pay the bills. I lived the life I lived. I used the tools I had. And I ended up opening a webcam company where girls would sit on a laptop and they would talk to guys on the internet for money. That's what they would do. The girls would sit there fully clothed or a bikini. Some of them would paint pictures. Some of them would sing songs. It's very similar to Twitch is now. Twitch is almost more sexual than the sexual websites were back then. I helped the girls set up accounts. We worked together. I helped them become as popular as possible. And everybody made money and everybody was happy. And nobody is complaining about it. Nobody's upset about it. None of the girls who worked for me are upset about it. The government aren't after me for it. It's perfectly legal. Nothing's wrong with it. There's just a whole bunch of people who now think that they can take the moral high ground against me because I previously ran this company. And I think I can anticipate the question you're going to ask. How do I reconcile with the fact that I used to produce pornography or degree pornographic content?
And now men are writing to you like, how do I?
And now men are trying to escape it.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. There's a few different ways I can answer that question. I think the first way I'll answer it is if you own a liquor store and an alcoholic comes in and you refuse to sell him alcohol, does he stop being an alcoholic?
No.
He just goes and buys from someone else. So that's the cop-out answer. The cop-out is, well, these people who are addicted are always going to be addicted regardless of whether I did it or not. So that's the cop-out answer. But the second answer I can give, which I think is more detailed and probably more nuanced, is one, I intimately understand the relationship between men and these websites. I've had and seen men give away their life savings to girls they've never met. I've watched and I've seen it. And I actually think a lot of the insights I give, a lot of the things I tell the world about the male mental health crisis, about men being so constantly lonely, about how important it is to build yourself into a high-value man, about how money alone is not enough. I explain all these things. A lot of these are lessons from the webcam days. I saw dudes who had a whole bunch of money, no other attributes, and they ended up on these websites spending hundreds of thousands of dollars because they didn't have anything else. So I think I learned a lot of important life lessons, and I do my best to try and pass them on to people. But I guess also, and this is the final answer I want to give about this whole subject is that I do think I can take the question you're asking and reverse engineer it and use it against the people who are trying to attack me for it. My answer to it would be, how do you sit and want to criticize me for being involved in the production of pornography 10 or 11 years ago if you're involved in the consumption of it? Because you're creating a market for it. So anybody who wants to sit and say that I did things wrong, that's fine. You're allowed to throw stones. But if you're in a glass house, if you have ever signed up to an OnlyFans account, if you have Instagram, if you're following these models on Instagram who you don't know, who are showing their tits and ass all day, if you've watched porn, if you fancy or think some beautiful woman on a movie, if you're going to live in lust yourself, and you're funding this entire industry, you're downstream, you're at the bottom of it, how can you then take the moral high ground on the person who's producing it? That doesn't make sense to me. So if you've totally abstained from pornography your entire life and you've never looked at it ever, and you've never been involved with it ever, and you're a perfect person and you want to come along and say what I did was wrong, that's fine. But I don't think most people who are complaining can even say that. I don't think they can. And I will once again state this, and I state this as a matter of almost fact. The level of investigation I've gone under, the level of forensic investigation my life has been submitted to, most people don't understand. Most people have never been through what I've been through. They've not had their entire life forensically analyzed, every word they've ever said, everyone they've ever spoken to, every WhatsApp chat, everything, head to toe by federal agencies for the last 10 years. And the most they come up with is that I ran a webcam company, which I've already admitted to. That's it. Take these people who criticize me and see how many porn websites they've been on. Get their laptops, see the they've Googled, see who they've spoken to. Like, it's all massively hypocritical. I do understand that some people would hear that and go, oh, you know, he's a bad person, etc. I don't think I was a bad person. I never hurt anybody. I think I could have done much worse things. I know many people from my circumstances who did many things worse than what I did. And all in all, I'm not going to sit and pretend I'm sorry for something I'm not sorry for. And I just want to make it clear to the world that, like you said, people come from different backgrounds and people grow and people change, etc. But I also look at the world in a different way. I think that we're all constantly doing our best. I think I'm doing the best I can right now. When I'm 55, I might watch this interview and think I'm an idiot, right? And I think we're all constantly doing our best. And I did the best I could do at the time. And I don't think it makes sense for me to hate past me for doing his best. I just don't think that's a very constructive mindset. This is the thing. I'm not particularly political. I didn't consider myself particularly political, but it looks like I'm kind of ending up there. And like I said, I'm a realist, which puts me on the conservative side, and I'm not stupid. And I understand very well about the world and propaganda and what they're trying to do to us. So you end up being a conservative by default. But you're a real person if you have flaws. If you want to sit and tell a disadvantaged youth growing up in the south side of Chicago how he's supposed to live his life from your perfectly manicured garden and your white picket fence, you're not going to get through to that person. They don't care. Haven't committed a crime. What can you say I've done? You could argue it was slightly immoral, perhaps. But I also, to a degree, maybe I'm a libertarian. I think if 20 people or 30 people get in a room and they all agree to do something and it makes them happy, then they should be allowed to do it. If nobody's hurt and nobody's upset by it, then they should do it. And perhaps that does make you a libertarian. If 30 full-grown men decide to go into a room and be gay and they want to be gay, then they should be allowed to go be gay. You're 30 men, you're not hurting anybody, it's what you want to do. If you want to wear red t-shirts, wear red t-shirts. If me and my brother had 30 people, we all got together and everyone made money and everyone was happy, who's others to come along and criticize and say people are victims, people are upset, this is wrong, this is bad, etc. So, yeah, you're completely right. It's amazing how people throw stones and how imperfect everybody is, truly. And I think the best thing you can do as a man is obviously learn your lessons from your life and try your best to pass them on. I feel like I'm doing that to the best of my ability. But also, another thing that conservatives is going to blow their minds, is going to really upset them. What they don't understand about especially the strength of my message is that to especially the young boys of the world, I'm cool. I'm cool. And I know they think that doesn't matter, but if you want to sit behind a desk and go, the Republican Bill 304, you're a dork, so no one gives a shit, right? You're a nerd. I've got the big cars and pretty women and I live the lifestyle. If you want to really capture the youth of today, you need to get some kind of affinity with them. They need to at least want to be you to a degree. You need to at least be their hero to a degree. This is where liberalism wins. I don't think a lot of conservatives understand that liberalism's sexy. You do drugs, you run around, you burn stuff. It's cool, you get a party. Because what do conservatives do? Stay home, stay home, stay home. It's boring, right? At least what they don't understand is that conservatives will sit there and go, he's a terrible role model because he has all these pretty girls in this fast car and he's a materialistic. That's the reason I can actually help the world. That's the reason young boys will listen to me. You said it yourself, 14, 15-year-old boys, they'll look at my life and go, okay, I want to listen to this guy. They don't want to listen to me if I sit behind a desk and read Republican Bill 308. I don't read that crap. I don't know. And they don't care.
Yeah.
Trump was a hero. And to be a hero, you have to be attacked and you have to be an imperfect person. And that's the reality of the world. And culture is super important. And you're right in regards to conservatives giving up. I'm trying to think of conservative culture now. I mean, I like to think that we're making degeneracy unpopular. I like to think that there are some good voices out there that is making God cool again. I actually like to believe the pendulum is swinging. I do believe it, and I see it online, and it's a combination of so many small things coming together almost in perfect timing. But it is cultural. You need a cultural shift that moves away from this insanity. And you're right. If you just want to sit there and just preach, nobody's going to be interested in it. And I also think that especially in the masculine realm, I can't talk for being a woman, but I can talk for being a man. In the masculine realm, we certainly like to see people lead by absolute and utter example. Because traditionally, we would be following our commander or the man we respected into war. So we'd like to know he can at least fight. You like to see he's at least brave. You like to see him lead by example. And I think especially if conservatives want to win the culture war, then they need to lead by example. If you're gonna be a conservative preacher and you want to tell men about how they should live their lives, you should be as strong as possible. You should look in shape. You should be big. You should show you're motivated, you're disciplined. You should absolutely, of course, we all have vices, but you should be very disciplined with your outlook. You should make it very clear to the outside world that what you've done wrong, what you haven't done wrong, you should take accountability. I think you need to lead by example. I don't think you can preach to men. I don't think you can preach to young boys. I think that's the reason why they don't do so well in school in general. I don't think that's the reason why they're disenfranchised. I think you need to just lead by example and let them follow. And I feel like I'm kind of doing that by just standing up and saying, no, this is who I am and I'm unapologetic for it. And this is what I've done. And this is what I intend on doing. And I'm going to try and save the world.